Hello people, welcome to my channel Code with Lewis. Today I'm doing a Flexbox tutorial and I'm calling it Flexbox Inception. The reason for this is because it's sort of the way that I've processed things, how I've learnt them. The initial way I learnt it was quite poor, and then after watching more tutorials and understanding it myself, I developed a different way of looking at things. When we're looking at sort of websites or pages you want to build in applications, we're going to compartmentalize things, and we're going to do it so that we have sort of columns within rows, within columns and rows and all that sort of stuff. They're all going to be intertwined, which is why it's called Inception, because there's layers of Flexbox within Flexbox. And I think it's really important to understand that to really get to grips with Flexbox. I'm going to go through some of the sort of basic features, you know, flex end, all that sort of justifying, aligning the items, all that sort of stuff. Stay tuned because it will be really good. If you don't know what Flexbox is, it's a tool that we use to help position our elements in an application or a website, and in my opinion is absolutely essential for you to be using because it makes everything so much easier. It's sort of automatically responsive as well, which is really important nowadays where we have mobiles, tablets, laptops, you know, large desktop screen, these massive sort of curved screens. So yeah, it's really important to use. I'm someone that really believes in Flexbox. I'm really passionate about Flexbox because I came from sort of floats and doing top and using pixels to organize my page. You definitely don't want to be doing that. You want to be using Flex or Grid, and Grid is an amazing tool as well, which I'll probably do a tutorial on in the future. Now the intro is done, let's get into the code. So before we actually start coding, let's actually show you what we're going to code. So sticking with the Inception theme, I've got on IMDb and the sort of Inception page, and I found this sort of area here. There's action, adventure, sci-fi, across to the watch on Prime Video, down to the IMDb Pro section. I've just got a screenshot of this down here, and this is basically what we're going to code. So when we see the sort of things that we want to code, the website we want to build, or whatever it is, first things first, I think the most important thing to do is to put it in sections. So we're just going to create this sort of box on the outside. Of course, this would be sort of one major section of our website. And then the first things here, really super simple, just to split that right down the middle there. And what we can see from here is we've got these two sections, and of course these two sections are going to have a direction of a row, and this is set by the flex direction attribute. In these areas now we have all the elements are stacking on top of each other, and they are forming a sort of column. So that would obviously be flex direction column, and the other attributes in the flex direction category as well, which would be column reverse, so obviously flipping these the other way around, and row reverse, which would obviously flip the row the other way around. Other things we're going to cover will include the sort of justifying content, so where the content is going to be along the sort of axis that we've defined. So justify content, we'll go into this further and we'll show some real sort of visual examples to show you, but that will define how we are going across these axes that we've defined with flex direction. So for example, if we put the justify content for center, we would want to see our content sort of here, and if we put, say, flex start, we want it at the start of the arrow. Flex end, no real surprises of course at the end, and the same thing applies to the column. Additionally, we're going to have align items, another really important factor and attribute for flex, and align items is going to be how we are in the axis perpendicular to flex direction. So if we set flex direction to a row like we have on the bottom here, align items is going to be along here. So if we set align items to flex start, our content's going to be up here. Flex center is going to be here. Flex end at the bottom, and there's also stretch as well, which is the default setting, which is going to cover the whole of that axis. And again, the same thing will happen when we go to column, but of course, instead of being in the vertical axis here, it will be in the horizontal axis here. So let's get into the code. Let's start fleshing out these two sections. Start looking at some of these attributes in action. So right now, all I've got is this sort of 500 pixel high section. Obviously similar sort of color to what we saw before. And that's just been established with some simple code, just attacking the main here, the main element, putting the width as 90%, and putting the height as obviously 500 pixels, background color, etc, etc. The setup for this is super easy. I'm not going to go over it. You know, putting the link as a star.css. Yeah, really easy stuff. So let's actually start coding out properly. So the first thing I want to do, as I said, we've got that left and right hand side. So we're going to have those two sections. We've got those two sections in there. We can see straight away the attributes that I was speaking about before. So we've got display flex, the flex direction as row, justified content, a space between. I just want to show something quickly, which is some documentation I think is really useful in case you sort of forget something. And it's called CSS-tricks, and just put Flexbox in Google and you'll find it. And you can see what's sort of happening here. So as I was saying before, flex direction is going to set the direction of the main axis that you want to put the content in or the elements in. This flex wrap is something I'm probably not going to cover today, but maybe set to you as something to do for homework. All these have sort of shorthand versions as well, which can be really useful for reducing the amount of code you're writing. And justify content. So this is where we are here. So we can see space between. The big sort of difference between space between the rest of them is that there's no space on the edge, but the space between the elements, as is sort of suggested. So we're just going to flick back to that and then back to the code. So these two sections now, using the main selector, have been spread apart. But of course, because there's nothing in them, we can't see that. So let's actually put some things in them. So for now, I'm going to put a div in here. And that div is going to have 3 spans. And that is going to represent the sort of genres that we saw at the top of the page, which were action, adventure, and sci-fi. So let's get those in there. I'm just going to copy and paste them quickly. So we've got those 3 in there now. And let's give this a class, considering it is genres. Let's give it a class of genres. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So we want these genres, class in our CSS, of course. And in this, we want our display to be flex. So that's the first setting we want to do to make sure that the parent container, this is a really important point by the way, the parent container and all the children of that parent container are the things that are affected when we do our, when we apply display flex. So the div, class genres, all the spans in here are going to be set by this display flex. And next thing we want to do is set the flex direction. As mentioned before, that's going to set the main axis of our elements. And of course, we want this to be horizontal rather than vertical. So we're going to want to put that into a row. And here we can see what justify content does visually. So we're going to put justify content flex start to begin with. And if we flick black, this is how we sort of want it to look. So we've got the content on the left hand side here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an X in here. You can see here how the text is completely apart from each other, like we saw in space between. So let's have a little play with it. Let's see what happens when we put space around, space evenly and other things to really visually show what is happening. And we look at this to refer. If you're first starting out with Flex, I really recommend just having a look at this and seeing what is happening. After a bit, you will sort of remember them off by heart. You know, the wording is quite descriptive of what's happening. We're going to change the main. So in space between, we're going to put space around. And let's see what happens now. So you can see we've got sort of an even bit of space between here, the middle, and the right hand side. This probably, so that's, if we split this directly in half, it would be sort of perfectly positioned. And you know, space between, got space around. What other ones we got? We got space evenly, which are kind of the same. So the three sections to the left, the center, and the right are all even. We've got genre sorted now. I just want to go maybe a step back. Maybe I should have done this first. And we're going to call our sections left and right. So let's go into our section here. Go to class of left. Of course, this is a bad naming convention. Don't do this in a real project, but just for ease of simplicity here, we're going to do it like this. So here, as we said before, the flex direction of these areas is in a column. So let's go into this. The first thing we want to do is display flex. So everything within these are going to be in a sort of column format, within a flex format. Then we're going to do the flex direction. And this is where we get the sort of column format. And justify content we're going to leave for now. There's no need to actually touch it. And also there's nothing actually going to change at this moment in time. So there's no point going back and checking the browser. So let's start adding more things in. So we want to go in here, and as part of the section we want to work on will be the paragraph. We're just going to call Law 25. Let's just make it easy for ourselves. And we can see that get added in there. It's probably reaching a bit on the right hand side. So I'm going to just set a min width on the right so that it does actually take up some space. And sort of represents what we want without sort of encroaching whilst we're doing the left hand side. So yeah, that's sorted now. So we've got that sort of look with the 66%, what we want to call it, done on the left, and the sort of 35% left over on the right. There's some padding to these as well, so of course they weren't touching the edges. There was some space in between. If we just go back to the screenshot, so there is a little bit of space on each of the edges. So I think it's important to capture that part of it as well. We've got the P tag in, and now the next sections are all divs. And if we go back to the shot here, the snapshot, we're going to delete these, and we can start to see the sort of inception that I was talking about now, because we get these sections here that are in a column. They clearly go down in a column fashion, but the sort of writing in here goes like this. What we're going to do is we're going to put them as two separate elements, and this one especially is a really important one because we have a similar effect happening here. So I think this would be a good point actually, if you want to just do this sort of element on your own, this one box here, because we have actually done the exact same thing before, but I'm not going to obviously say when. It's kind of obvious, but I'll let you do it. So yeah, let's get into these. So because they all had their own kind of style, I'm going to put them all in divs, and these are going to have, as I said before, I'm going to do it so the director, I believe, the director and the second part, and the writer and the second part, etc., will be in separate spans. So these were by Christopher Nolan. And these first two sections were very similar. So I'm just going to do that for that one. And the last one, I believe, was interesting. So go back on that. The stars. So I'm just going to copy and paste from the website. So we've got our sections now set up, but if you remember, we actually had that sort of arrow on the right hand side. So we're going to put a span in, an arrow, and for us to actually do this properly, we're going to need another div to wrap all of these other span tags in, because these two sections are actually going to be separate from each other. So let's push all that and indent that properly. Now we've got our sections. Let's get into some flex. We can see here that the the arrow, everything's falling in a sort of column fashion. And of course, we want this arrow to be over here somewhere. So that's one thing we want to do. The rest of it looks okay. We're going to add a bit of styling to this action adventure sci-fi just to make it a bit closer to the original. But let's get into that. So first things first, let's get into this div here. So we're going to want to call these similar things. I think kind of makes sense to give them the same class. So we're just going to call this a left container. As I said before, this naming isn't what I want to do. Please, when you do real projects, give it much more relevant names, let's say. So all these left containers, they're going to have the display of flex, the flex direction of row, of course, and justify content. For now, we're going to put flex start, and we'll see how that looks now on the website. So what happened here, because they're all flex start, we have the arrow sort of coming off right at the start, as we would expect. And just to have a little play with sort of the justifying here, if we go, flex end, you're gonna have to guess where we're going. So if we have flex end here, we're all on the right hand side. Flex center, we will be in the center. The space around and stuff like that won't apply to these two, but the stars one is what we want to apply that to. So let's add an extra into this. Just call it we're just going to call it between, because what we want to do is we want to put space between them. So we're just going to put dot between and justify. We're just using this sort of cascade of CSS here. So we're going to go space between, and when we go back to that, we need to you see what I've done there. We have the space between here, so we've got the stars on the left and the arrow on the right, and that's exactly what we wanted and exactly how it looks here. So let's get these back to where they should be. So of course these flex end should be flex start, and I think it would be cool now to actually add some sort of styling to the genres. So we're going to go genre span, which is obviously going to target the spans within the genre class, and then for that we're going to do padding 0.25 rem. I think we're going to need some margin as well. I'm going to just call that 0.25 rem as well. Actually, I'm going to change padding to 0.5. Let's get the background color to a gray. Let's see what happens. Border radius 1 rem. That's maybe a bit too much. 0.5 rem. And we want the border to be 2 pixels solid black. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Oh yeah, that's not too bad. To be fair, 1 rem might have actually been right for that. So let's just go back and put 1 rem for the border radius. Go back to that. Maybe even bigger, but yeah, let's not spend too much time on that. The point is that we've got the sort of styling kind of similar to how we had it before. We've got the text on the left, we've got these set up nicely. Let's now add the small border that is on the bottom of all these areas. So I'm going to do something kind of tailwindy here, I think. I'm going to just put a class of B border for bottom border, because it's just something that I want to apply to all of these things. I don't have to go through basically do it individually. You could call it lazy, you could call it efficient, call it whatever you want. So we're going to go border, of course, bottom. We're going to go 2 pixels solid grey, and on all these items as well we're going to need some padding, because right now it's going to be right up close to the bottom of the text. So let's go on left container. We're going to need some padding on that. Let's just say 0.5 rem 0 and have a look at what we've got. So yeah, not too bad. The paragraph clearly needs a bit of love as well. So we only have one paragraph class right now, so I'm just going to call paragraph element. So we're going to go, oh sorry, getting ahead of myself there. Not just padding 0.5 rem 0 again. I think it looks like there's some sort of margin that's been applied to it automatically, so I just want to see what happens when we change that. And there we go, that's looking a lot better. We could also go through and change these spans to blue. Not sure, I think that's a bit of a waste of time right now since we're focusing on flex, but we can't have this section done. Let's just add the IMDb Pro. Of course, this IMDb here is probably an image, and then on the right is maybe a paragraph or a span. Let's just add that in quickly just to finish the left hand side, and we can move on to the right hand side. So here we are at the bottom. We're just going to do another div. It would be an image, but I'm just going to put span IMDb Pro, and then let's put another span in, sorry, a paragraph. I'm just going to copy paste this in. Here we've got that in now. We probably want to call this left container as well, actually. And that should be fine because, of course, we have the B border set separately, so the bottom won't have a border. Of course, we just get the same attributes from the left container, which will make it pretty much done, I believe. Oh, maybe not, maybe not. So here, there's something weird's got on here. I'm actually not quite sure. It might be a good example to use align items. So align items, as I mentioned, introducing this a bit earlier than I thought I would, but we're going to put center on this. As I said before, so align items, we've got the flex direction set as a row, so actually we're this way, and then we get align items that sets the axis perpendicular to the direction we're currently setting. So because we've got this in a row, align items is the sort of vertical axis, and we're setting that as center, so everything should be aligned in the center. And of course, if we set flex start, it should be at the top, flex end at the end, and stretch as something that covers the whole distance if possible. So let's go back and have a look. Yeah, as expected, we have that set up really nicely. Definitely need some padding on the right hand side of this IMDb Pro, but really all finished. So I'm just going to do that quickly, and we will actually move on to the right hand side this time. We're going to put class of, we're just going to put pad right, because we just don't want to spend too much time doing this properly. It's, you know, I'm sure you're very capable at CSS, and you're not going to be doing classes like this whilst I whiz through a tutorial. So pad right, we're going to put padding right, of course, and let's just put 1 rem, and we're done. So let's do the right hand side. Before we move on, I actually do want to show a bit more about align items, because I feel like there hasn't actually been that many good examples here. We can see it here, but I want to really like visually show it. So we have quite a lot of space left at the bottom. We could just get rid of the height now. I just did set it as something to sort of show that this is the sort of area we're working with. So let's set align items on a few things. So this left hand side here, we can see that we're in a column which is going down. This whole section has a column attribute on the flex direction, and align items, as typical, is set by stretch here. And look at these areas here. So if you think this director Christopher Nolan, it's actually really small, but the border goes across the whole way, and by default align items is set as stretch. So let's go into the code and let's change it to flex start, flex end, and see, and well, flex center as well. Oh, sorry, just center, and see what happens. So we're going to go into here, and our section from it is just called left. So if we go into left, we don't actually have one on its own. So let's create one, left, and let's do align items. And as I said, it's set as stretch by default. So let's put flex start. Let's see how it affects our page. So as I said, we had direct for Christopher Nolan. It's actually quite a small area. This should be right to Christopher Nolan, by the way, I just realised. And now that we don't have stretch set, you can see that everything's bunched up on the left-hand side or at the start. And that is what you'd expect. And if we look on here, we should be able to find align items. So here, this is set as a row. But if we see flex start, everything's sort of pushed towards the top. Of course, in a column, that would mean everything pushed to the left. So yeah, that's quite a good way of looking at things. This align constant as well is for when you're doing wrapping, but I would leave that to you. That's sort of your homework to look at sort of how things wrap in Flex, the shorthand for Flex, etc. as I mentioned before. So we're going to go back and you're going to guess Flex start. So if I change that to Flex end, what's going to happen? Hopefully you got that right. And also Flex center as well. We're just going to do that quickly. Sorry, just center. I'm going to go back to that quickly and we can see that in the center there. So yeah, that was just, I wanted to really visually show align items because we did touch on it very briefly for this bottom area, but I wanted to show you in more detail. We're going to go back. We're going to change that, of course, to stretch, or we could delete it entirely because it is the default setting, and then left and right as well. So I just want to mess with this for a second. So we've mentioned justify content as well. We've mentioned space between, space around, space evenly. But what about if we put flex end on it? So have a guess of what happens. 3, 2, 1. We go to the end. So everything's like you expect, you know, nothing crazy is happening here. And if you're wondering how it's happening, what's going to happen when you apply certain things, you know, as I said, use that complete guide to Flexbox page here. Really useful. If you forget something or think something, there may be a better tool that you're forgetting about, whatever it is really useful. So yeah, I just wanted to show that it's quite good to see how the different things work, and a lot of the terminology is the same. So for align items, flex end is the same for justify content, flex end, but of course different axes they are being applied to. So let's revert that. We don't want that like that. So now we can work on the right hand side. So let's go down here, right hand side, and start working on the right. I'm just going to copy down this right here. I feel like it just makes sense to have that on the right for obvious reasons. And on the right hand side, let's go to the snippet. So we have the flex direction of the whole section in a column, as was mentioned before. And similarly to the left hand side, we have these sort of sections that clearly have a row. This first section in particular is interesting because we do have this sort of split here with this watch on Prime Video and rent/buy, and this is maybe another bit of homework for you to do now, so maybe try do this quickly before I do it now. So yeah, this is your chance to do it, and these all are going to have very similar outputs to the left. So it's all going to be sort of rows. This one is basically exactly the same as before, and this bottom one is the same as here. So let's get into these now. On the right, we're therefore going to have a couple of containers. So we're going to just call this the very inventive name as right container. We have, let's just say there's 3 of these, and on the bottom we're going to have a p tag that I'm just going to copy paste in. There we go, that's pasted in now. We just refer back to here quickly. We just see that at the top the div is completely empty, so of course they're not taking up any space. Right container, we have the sort of play button, and I'm just going to do this with a pipe and arrow. Let's see how that turns out. And the second section I'm going to put in its own div, and this is going to have 2 spans. So the spans are going to contain the sort of rent buy, and they're going to contain the watch on Prime Video. So I'm just copying those in now, and straight away you can think about how these are going to be put in. So of course we're going to put I'm not going to give this its own class name, we can just use the right container. So we can use right container to begin with. All these containers, same as the left hand side, had their text and the little image or whatever they had on the left in a row. So let's put the display as flex. Notice how I'm doing it the sort of same motion every time as well. This is how I was taught to do it through a game called FLEXBOX Zombies, which I really recommend. I'm going to link at the end as well. So we've got display flex, we've got flex direction is the next attribute we want to set, and that's of course in a row. And justify content on this one, I think it will be fine by default, but we're just going to set it as flex start just to make sure. And for that, well, let's do align items as well, because straight away we're thinking, you know, we had that problem on the left hand side where we had our two items but they were slightly separated like that, the IMDb bit. So let's just set this as center anywhere, and this should help us with the problem that we're going to see in a second, and I'll take the align items off and we'll see what happens without it. So we've got that right container sorted now. So we have all of these, this span and div are in a row. But notice how I said before, at the very start with flex, the direction is set by the parent. So display flex will work on the parent, but this div in here hasn't actually got any direction set on it. So if we go back to the code, we can see that all of it is in a row. But actually we want this watch on Prime Video and the rent buy from GBP 3.49 to actually be in a column. Let's go back here. So we've got this div here, so we've got right container. I've noticed that's but rather than buy as well. So we've got right container, and we're going to use this selector. We're going to go into div, and of course we're going to do display flex direction, this time into a column, and here we should be all good to go. And yet, see how that's set nicely. We're just going to put some padding on the right of the my little weird flag / play button arrow there. So let's go into this span here. So we're just going to put, actually we're just going to put it here. So we're going to put it on the left of this instead. So let's put margin left 1 rem. Go back to the code. That's pretty much sorted. But one thing I said I was going to do is I'm going to take the align items off. So let's see what happens when I comment this out. We go back and see how it's at the top now. Hopefully you were expecting that to happen. And if we go into this and we put flex end, you're going to have to guess what happens while I'm typing it. So flex end there, we go back here. Of course it's at the bottom of this flex axis. So this whole area, which is the yellow bit here, is in a row, and of course that means align items is in the vertical axis, and when we set flex end, that attacks the sort of bottom side of that container. So hopefully you were expecting that. So we're going to go back, set it to center, and we're also going to put this div here yellow. We're going to put all of these as the background color of gray. But with this one in particular, we actually want the background color to be yellow, of course, and we're going to change the color to black. The text just isn't massively hidden. We're going to put some, let's put a border radius on as well. I'm pretty sure it had a little bit, 0.5 rem maybe. Let's go back, and we can see, yeah, that's, oh, okay, I've definitely misplaced that element selector. We've put the right, oh, okay, yeah, it's not that, my mistake. It is of course both of these onto the whole container, and there we go, that's actually sorted now. And now we need to build out the other containers. So we go back, we've got more watch options, add to watch list. We've also got this little arrow here. I'm just going to put it as a right caret. No need to go into font awesome or whatever it is to get this sorted. So let's do those. We've got this one, super simple, a span. that has more watch options. And in this container, we've got plus add to watch list, or what's the spell on it. And like I mentioned before, we have that little arrow at the end as well. So of course we want to get that in. We're just going to put that as a right caret. So hopefully you're going to guess what's coming in there. So if we're going to look at the right container, we should be expecting everything to be stuck on the left. And to separate this, we're going to need an attribute. So hopefully you're saying out loud now, you need to do this, you need to do this. So I'm going to call the class dot between, and we're going to put justify content between, space between there. And we're just going to use the cascade to overwrite it. So right container between. And there we are, the arrow is on the right hand side. We're going to put some padding on this as well. It looks pretty bad being so close to the edges. So let's put some padding on the containers. Go back, right container. Let's definitely put some margin on there as well. So padding 0.5 rem. And let's just put margin as 0.5 rem as well. Go back and we're looking okay. See, I've got an extra div in here. Where have you come from? There's the, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's go back to the page. And there we are really, that's kind of it. Of course we could have more CSS, all that sort of stuff, but there's no real need to. If we go back as well, we can remove the height. Let's get rid of that, and then that's kind of it really. You know, we've done the flex, we've got everything where it should be. Now of course we could add some extras if we wanted to. So you can see there's a lot of this blue. We could of course create a class just called blue text. Tell I'm quite into Tailwind now because I'm doing all these like B border, yellow, all that sort of stuff. It's really helped me with my CSS in a vanilla sort of sense. So if we just had a class that was called blue text, we just put a color of blue, apply it to all these sort of spans, and that would be pretty close. We could add some more padding to the center, which bring it a little bit closer. Of course, like we could use a color picker, take that red, take all these grays, etc. But yeah, that's kind of it for the flex. I really hope it helped. As I said, we can go to this page here, and some of the things I did, there's really like 4 major things you need to do, which is display flex, set the parent container to flex that you're targeting, and if you are having issues, then make sure that you are targeting that properly, and that the parent container is containing the flex items that you're wanting to change the position of, and you don't have, say, a container that then contains a div has a few things, or a list that has a few things in, because of course you're going to have to apply display flex to that instead of the parent container, or even as well as have the flex direction, which sets the main direction of the flex. So whether that's in a column or a row, and of course, actually, I may as well show this quickly. But if we go on to this here, so flex direction column, just to show you, column reverse, what happens? We can go back and everything's upside down. So yeah, just wanted to show that it does actually work. Row, of course, would switch these around as well. Other important things, so we had the display flex, flex direction, the justify content, so how things are separated. So here we've got the flex start, everything bunched up at the start, flex end, everything bunched up at the end, center, space between, all these things, and that shows you visually as well. And finally, align items. So there's like 4 major things. Align items, the last one, so that is the axis that is perpendicular to the flex direction. So if we've got a column, align items will be how things are on the horizontal axis. If we've got a row, then that'll be how things are on the vertical axis. And this is covered here as well, just here. And yeah, that's it, the 4 major things. As I said before as well, your homework is to take what I've taught you and sort of go into align content, see what happens when you start introducing flex. You'll need to use align content then, and you can see how it's been applied here. And those shorthand ways as well, so flex flow and just flex in general, all these sort of things. There's loads of cool like shorthand things that you can do to reduce the amount of code that you're writing. But first, get to grips with the sort of basics of flex. That's it for me today. I really hope that it did help someone. If it did help you, please let me know. I'd really love to know, because that's what all my videos are for, really. It just aims to try and help one person improve in their sort of software development journey. So if that person was you, please let me know. Also, I'd really like to see some more comments. So it's not for like channel growth, it's for to see what you guys want. So if you want me to do more Flexbox stuff, if you want another Tailwind tutorial, if you want me to cover something from a bootcamp that maybe you have a question about, please let me know. I'm gonna pin a comment in there below just saying suggestions for next video, because I do really want to sort of make this for you guys. To do make these videos for you people, so it would be great to have some input and sort of steer me in the right direction, because of course it's just me starting right now. So you know, I don't know what people want. So if you do want more Flexbox, if you want something basic, semantic HTML, maybe some Java, Spring Boot, whatever it is, please do let me know, because I'm really happy to do them. I really enjoy making them, and I'm trying to get better at sort of graphic design and video editing as well. So hopefully you can see that got the mic as well, got that working properly. So yeah, I am trying to make better quality content, and as well improve the things that I'm covering, so they're more suited to the people that actually watch my channel. See you next time.